And drum roll, coming in at number 1 is Sableye. These are the top 5 most hated builds in Pokemon Unite. These are the 5 Pokemon that you hate to see them on your team and you love to see them on the enemy team, because generally you are going to lose when you see this Pokemon on your team, and it is quite easy to verse, especially for the typical solo queue player. Coming in at number 5 is Zeraora. Now, honestly, Zeraora, personally, this is more of a conditioned hatred rather than a I think this Pokemon is a bad hatred. The only reason why it's conditioned is because I have time and time again seen a lot of players make poor decisions with Zeraora. So I think this Pokemon is hated not because the Pokemon itself is bad, but because it seems to attract new players who make poor decisions, which inherently condition you to hate this Pokemon. So Zeraora, number 5. The 4th on my list is Gengar. I personally cannot stand seeing a Gengar on my team, and it's especially worse because this Pokemon can only function in the jungle. It requires stacks when it comes to a lane, so generally this Pokemon will come to your lane and it will overstay its welcome, which is decent if you're getting some stacks in, but if you're not getting the value, that your teammate will typically try and stay there and force some stacks, which will feed the enemy team. Not only this, it means that your team has poor rotations of the jungle, so your team overall has less experience, and if you try and take the blue buff because it's been sitting there for 20 seconds, you will be pinged for the remainder of the game. So Gengar, in my opinion, yeah, and also this Pokemon requires skill, right? So you can't just pick the Pokemon up and carry with it. Honestly, I just don't think Gengar is a great pick, and I actually quite like versing them, so long as I'm not using something super squishy. Coming in at number 3 is a Duraladon. Now, the reason I don't like Duraladon, again, I think this Pokemon, there is a case for using it. It doesn't do a lot of great AoE damage, unless if you're really, really good with your stealth rocks, but then you lose the mobility from the Dragon Tail. So I think this Pokemon has poor mobility, it requires the jungle, and as well as that, it doesn't really have that great secure anymore because they nerfed this Pokemon. So it's got pretty poor secure, it rips the ray, and again, I think this is more conditioned because the amount of times it is bang on 2 minutes, they will sit there, it's still 5v5, people are positioned for the ray fight, and your Duraladon just launches that Unite move and tries to flip the ray as it spawns, and this creates a flip. It makes the 8 minutes that you just played feel like a giant waste of time. So again, this is more probably coming from a conditioned space, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels this way about Duraladon. Coming in at number 2 of the most hated Pokemon I see is Cinderace. Now, the reason I'm saying Cinderace in my solo queue games is because it will take jungle, it will grief jungle. If you have picked the jungle first and then someone locks in Cinderace and they take jungle with like 15 seconds left before the game starts, they will grief the whole game. So Cinderace is, in my opinion, a Pokemon that I hate to see in solo queue. And if you have had the if you've gone through the displeasure of laning with a Cinderace, you will realize how bad this Pokemon is in lane. It doesn't really do anything until level 7, so it requires the jungle experience. It has no form of secure. It is free. If you're the jungler on the other team, you'd love to see a Cinderace in lane. So this is a Pokemon I hate seeing. It requires very little skill, and also at fights, it's quite dependent on the team. So if you are playing the tank, you're dependent on the Cinderace sticking behind you, and if you're the Cinderace player, you're dependent on your tank giving you vision, and you've got to be pretty well coordinated to be successful. And unfortunately, in a lot of your typical solo queue games, you'll find your little bunny not participating in a fight and waiting to try and steal the Rayquaza with its Unite move. I do not like seeing a Cinderace in my lobbies personally. And drum roll, coming in at number 1 is Sableye. Sableye is the most useless Pokemon in the game, and there is no disputing this. Sableye is literally pathetic. Unless if you're on a 5-stack with clear communication about where the enemies are, this Pokemon is trash. It doesn't even like, unless if you're doing phenomenal CC to the enemy and you're making good decisive backups, which is typically the tell sign of a player who's really, really good at Pokemon Unite. This is a bad Pokemon. I hate seeing Sableye, right? And if I'm laning against a Sableye, it's not even it's not even a threat. It does a little bit of CC, it barely damages you, it just tickles you. It doesn't support its laning partner, it doesn't really have great secure, so it's quite easy to secure against, unless if it's a pretty good player using the Sableye. Then yeah, even if you understand this Pokemon inside out, I still think it is a pretty bad pick. So Sableye is a no from me. Guys, those are my 5 Pokemon that I hate the most in Pokemon Unite. I'm sure you guys have got plenty more, so let me know in the comments. I'm pretty on the fence with the likes of Gardevoir. I'm pretty on the fence with the likes of Greninja. And if you've got any Pokemon that you just hate seeing in SoloQ, let me know in the comments. And as well as that, and if you agree with these 5 picks, make sure you drop a like on the video below. And if you've stuck around through to the end, click on one of these videos up. It's a tile on the screen. I would greatly appreciate it. Otherwise, guys, good luck on that SoloQ grind. Get out there and don't use these 5 Pokemon.